Don't ask a veteran what they did when they served over there.
Don't ask questions, but if those people are willing to share with your students their experiences, that's wonderful.
So when you come back and students is like, oh, well, you know, you was in the military, did you shoot anybody? It's like, you know, if I did, you know, like, that's not a memory, something I would want to remember. It's not something that you would be proud of. It's like, okay, it was a job that I had to do. It was a situation, and, you know, this is what happened. It's not like, oh, okay, you know, I came out on a rampage like Rambo, you know, and so it's like students need to be self-conscious with veterans' emotions.
When I talk to veterans, it never ceases to amaze me how insensitive other students are often to what some of the veterans have gone through. And I really think it's very significant that that should be talked about to students when we know and if we know that we have veterans on campus. Because the bottom line is that to ask some of the questions that they ask, you know, the typical one like, how many people have you killed, those kinds of things, that really doesn't touch people in the right way after having gone through those experiences. And some of the memories associated with some of the injuries and some of the concerns and situations that we vets have gone through are not happy ones. You know, and so, you know, while it looks so exciting and dramatic to someone who's not gone through it, once you've gone through it, it changes your whole perspective on things, you know, changes the way you look at things, you know. And one of the things that I have on my email is if you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I mean that very specifically, that people really need to adjust some of their thinking. The other thing that I really do say very strongly to other students is that while a student may look like he has, a student veteran may look like he or she has an attitude or is not as open as you would like, or they may even look like, some people might have even termed them as being somewhat angry or nasty. Sometimes it could be a direct result of them having some emotional difficulties, such as PTSD, et cetera, et cetera. And it just looks like they're just being a mean person or they're just being a non-receptive person. So the first reaction is, you know, to treat them like you would anybody that's perhaps uncomfortably handling you or reacting to you. But that's not a good idea, especially nowadays when we have so many of them coming back after having some horrific experiences. We need to become sensitive as a society.
My fellow students should know that I am just like them. I listen probably the same music as them. I enjoy life just as much as they do. I just have a different job.
Students should know that there are veterans on campus and that they need to be a little sensitive to the fact that most veterans have, especially nowadays with 2 wars, well, one's over now, but the veterans are coming back, most of them have been to Iraq. They need to be sensitive that they're around and that, you know, you can't ask them questions like, oh, how was it over there? That's, how am I supposed to answer that question to somebody who has no idea about being in a war zone? You know, I can talk to my fellow veteran about it.
You could just say, hey, you're in Iraq, huh? How was that? What'd you think? What'd you learn there? That would be a great question.
A good question to ask a veteran is, are you okay? A lot of times we get forgotten, or people are afraid to invite us out because they don't know how to relate to us. Or sometimes we don't know how to relate to them, but the best thing to do is just to ask us if we want to be a part of a certain activity or something. You'd be surprised. We probably, 9 times out of 10 we do.
Now, if you recognize or you found out that we are service members or we are veterans, and you just want to say, hey, you know what, thanks for what you did or anything like that, then that alone, that actually does feel good.
The best thing that an administrative faculty member, a student, or any civilian anywhere can say to someone who's been in the military, thank you for your service.
Very often, veterans will think of themselves as humbly as any other person. and not necessarily be out there bragging about what they've gone through or talking about what they've gone through. And that's often because they don't even want to visit the memories or the thoughts about it. Some will tell you that they've awakened in the middle of the night, thinking about what they've seen. I, for one, did that, for a few months after I returned. There are things that remind you of those experiences, loud noises, all kinds of things that could, in fact, impact, how a veteran reacts. And it's not because of you. We should not be blaming you, nor should we blame the victim for what their responses are to anything. We just need to be there and try to support them through it. And I think that's an effort that every one of us can put into helping the experience be a better one for veterans when they return.
The main thing I would like the staff and the faculty to know about veterans, that we get to experience something that rarely most occupations could get to experience. So I would say when a veteran was to talk, to have more of a open ears instead of a judgment to pass. Not because we deserve it or want it, but more of the fact that it can open up people's minds and people's ideas of how they see things.
What I think the college staff and the college administrators should know about veterans is, if you don't have somebody that can actually walk you through step by step, we may lose someone.
One of the things they should know about veterans is each one is different from the other. But that they come from this common experience, and some have been damaged more than others. I think there should be a certain respect and understanding granted veterans. And when I have veterans in my classroom, they're usually much more intense, much more into the academics than the ordinary or the usual student.
I think that the college staff and administrators here at the Eastern Campus are great with how they handle veterans, and I think maybe I guess you would call it sensitivity training, just an hour of don't say this, don't say that. If somebody gets up and has to leave, don't worry about it. They're probably just having a rough day, especially the new guys.
It's important that administrators, faculty, and students remember that veterans have walked a different path. Unless you've walked a mile in their shoes, you can't really understand what a veteran has been through, what their training has done to them. It's changed them forever. Those who have been in combat situations will never look at life the same way again. And it's important to be very, very compassionate.
College administrators, faculty, and staff should know that although veterans look like everybody else, I'm not everyone else. A lot of people think that we shouldn't get special treatment, but those same people don't want to do my job. So I think that once identified as a veteran, I think that the staff should have a separate orientation for the veterans. I think that we have student orientation, but student orientation is very general. I think the colleges should have an orientation for the veterans, because a lot of veterans don't know the entitlements, what they're entitled to from the schools. It's like a guessing game. They're like, oh, well, do you think they offer this or that? And we don't know. And then we later find out, as we're graduating, that these resources were available to us. So I think having an orientation where everything's laid out on the table, all questions are asked, and that they become a great support system for us would be something that would benefit any veteran coming into their school system.
I would say, it's, as a faculty member, is if you have a veteran, they may need a little bit more time to adjust to the academic life, to readjust to coming back and finding themselves in this kind of environment. So I guess patience would be patience and cutting, is a military term, cutting them some slack. they deserve it.
Just welcome us. Just be like, hey, you know, try and be understanding for those. We don't want special treatment per se. It's nice for if we have to deploy or something, or go somewhere. Like I just came back from an op. Most of my professors are understanding and allowed me to do the work in my own time. And I think for students that are transitioning into college that are veterans, most of our concerns come from, if I have to deploy, will my professors work with me, or will I have to quit school, because a lot of us don't want to stop, you know. So it's great to have a support system for them, for the professors, you know.
If they're willing to open up in a classroom and talk about their military experience, fine. If not, don't push it, leave it alone. Perhaps in time they can talk about it.
I mean, I had a kid tell me, because, you know, he confides in me a little bit. I'm, you know, the head of the vets here, I guess you could say. And he told me that one of his professors asked him in front of the class if he had killed anybody. And that's not okay in any facet. I mean, even if it wasn't a veteran question. And the professor probably just didn't know any better. If they want to be known as a veteran and talk about something relative to what they're talking about in the class that, you know, they've gone through in the military, then let them say it. Don't say, hey, Pat, I know you were in the Army. What do you think about this? That's definitely a big no-no. I mean, I wouldn't care, but a lot of people would. Definitely the killing anyone, I think that would be common sense almost. But be sensitive that they're around and don't out them amongst their peers. The PTSD and depression issues that are coming up is pretty, I think, startling how many people have that. And like, even the suicide rate of veterans is, I mean, I think it's 1 every hour and 20 minutes or something like that. Something ridiculously high.
I think college administrators, faculty, and staff should really get to understand that student veterans, while they may look similar to the typical students because they come from all walks of life and they're in all sizes and colors and nationalities, et cetera, have some special issues that they might be confronting with respect to their own emotionality, with respect to their lack of contact with others because they've been gone for a long time, so they have to re-indoctrinate themselves and integrate themselves into society. And so there's some changes in terms of how they must be approached. And I would really recommend to faculty and administrators and staff to try to get to know that approaching them may be a little different than it is for others.